Today, we open the densest, most turbulent, and most sacred pages in the entire history of humanity. Understand this clearly. The Holy Week we are entering is not a mere annual commemoration, a dusty ritual, or a simple habit of the calendar. It is a brutal, visceral plunge into what the Greeks call kairos. Kairos is that lightning bolt moment where eternity tears through the veil of linear time, where the very finger of God fractures our human clocks to engrave the irreversible. It is the moment when the Creator no longer merely observes His creation, but decides to marry its dust, its tears, and its blood. To grasp the atomic weight of the words we are about to meditate upon, we must first set the stage of Jerusalem in that pivotal year of the Crucifixion. Imagine the atmosphere. Jerusalem is a literal pressure cooker ready to explode. It is Passover, the feast of absolute liberty, the burning memory of the passage from the slavery of Egypt to the Promised Land. The city is in a trance. A place that usually holds 50,000 souls is now bursting with over 200,000, packed together in a fervor that borders on total insurrection. The tension is palpable, electric, and dangerous. The Roman presence, under the orders of a nervous Pontius Pilate, is at its peak. Swords are drawn, shields glint under the Judean sun, and sentinel-less watch every single movement from the heights of the Antonia fortress. In the middle of this powder keg of nationalism, hatred for the occupier, and messianic expectation, a man enters. But he does not come on a war chariot. He has no army behind him. He does not brandish a blade of steel. He enters, mounted on a lowly donkey. Listen to this truth that disturbs the comfortable. God never arrives where we expect him, in the way we hope for him. While the crowd screams for vengeance and political power, the King of Kings advances in total humility. This is where the message becomes viral for your lives today. The strength of God does not reside in the clash of weapons, but in the sovereignty of sacrifice. They acclaim him with palms, yet they are already weaving the thorns. They throw cloaks under his feet, but soon they will strip him of his very garments. This contrast is the mirror of our own existence. How many times have we shouted, Hosanna, on a Sunday, only to whisper, Crucify him, through our actions on Monday? The Kairos questions you. Are you ready to let God fracture your certainties? Are you ready to see your Egyptian slavery, your fears, your addictions, your masks, collapse before the gentleness of this man on a donkey? God is not looking for spectators of history. He is looking for actors of the resurrection. Jerusalem trembled under the boots of the legionnaires, but it was the silence of Christ that was about to change the face of the world forever. Make no mistake, this week is not a movie we watch. It is a trial where we all sit on the defendant's bench and where the judge decides to take our place. The curtain rises. The shadow of the cross already stretches across the stones of the holy city. But remember, where the world sees a tragic end, God is preparing a seismic victory. Prepare your hearts, for what is about to unfold in the coming hours exceeds everything the human mind can conceive. The King has entered. The sacrifice is ready. The time of salvation has arrived. Let he who has ears to hear the thunder of grace approaching. Your breakthrough is not in the noise. It is in the King who rides in peace to win your war. In the Gospel of St. John, everything converges toward a single, seismic, and inescapable concept, the hour. Throughout the entire journey of the Gospel, we hear the haunting refrain of Jesus repeating, "My hour has not yet come." He moves through the crowds, heals the broken, and speaks to the winds, but he remains untouchable, shielded by a divine chronology that the world cannot hasten. But suddenly, at the threshold of Holy Week, the atmosphere shifts. The cosmic clock strikes. The tone changes from anticipation to an earth-shattering declaration. Father, the hour has come. Glorify your Son. You must understand the weight of this glory. In our human arrogance, we define glory by the height of our pedestals, the gold on our crowns, and the number of people bowing at our feet. But in the divine economy of the King of Kings, glory is found in the total, radical abasement of the self. We must stop and tremble before this absolute inversion of values, the royalty of the Lamb standing defiantly against the predatory power of the wolf. The world celebrates the predator. God sanctifies the sacrifice. The Gospel of John is a masterpiece of divine detail. Where other chroniclers see a tragedy of errors, John sees a coronation. Where the world sees an execution, the Spirit sees a liturgy. To the carnal eye, the cross is a shameful scaffold, a place of ultimate defeat and public mockery. But through the lens of the eternal, the cross is not an instrument of death, it is a throne of grace. It is the highest peak of earth reaching toward the heart of heaven. Every single word in this narrative carries a double charge, a dual frequency that vibrates through the soul. The raw, agonizing physical suffering of a tortured man and the majestic, unshakable sovereignty of a God who voluntarily lays down his life. Listen to the viral truth of the kingdom. Your greatest victory often looks like your most crushing defeat to those who do not know the Father. Jesus did not go to the cross because he was captured. He went because he was focused. He was not a victim of Roman steel or Jewish betrayal. He was the architect of an ancient plan for your liberation. When he hung there, stripped of his garments, he was actually being clothed in the splendor of his love. Each drop of blood was a signature on the contract of your freedom. The world screams that power is about how much you can take, how much you can control, and how many people you can crush. But the Lion of Judah shows us that true power is how much you can give, how much you can endure, and how many people you can save through your own brokenness. This is the hour that changes everything. It is the hour where the debt is paid, where the veil is torn, and where death is swallowed up by life. You are standing at the edge of this mystery. Do not look at the cross as a historical relic. Look at it as your current reality. Are you willing to embrace the hour in your own life? Are you willing to trade your earthly pride for the glory of the Lamb? The wolf is prowling, looking for someone to devour, but the Lamb has already won the war. The King is on his throne, and that throne is stained with the price of your soul. This is not a tragedy. This is the greatest triumph the universe has ever witnessed. The hour is here. The King is crowned. The victory is yours if you dare to believe in the majesty of the sacrifice. The meal begins in the heavy, candlelit intimacy of the upper room. The air is thick with the scent of bitter herbs and the unspoken weight of a destiny about to be fulfilled. But here, in the Gospel of St. John, the narrative takes a turn that defies all human religious logic. While other chroniclers dwell on the bread and the wine, John fastens his divine lens onto a gesture so scandalous, so socially illegal, and so spiritually explosive that it continues to shake the foundations of every earthly empire, the washing of the feet. Imagine the scene. Visualize the silence. The Master, the one who spoke the galaxies into existence and commanded the raging storms to be still, suddenly stands up. He lays aside his outer garment, the symbol of his status and his protection. He takes a simple linen towel and wraps it around his waist. In that singular movement, the Creator of the universe adopts the uniform of the lowest of the low. In the rigid hierarchy of the ancient world, this was not just a humble act, it was the specific, grueling labor of the non-Jewish slave. It was a task so demeaning that even Jewish servants were often exempted from it. Listen to the viral frequency of this truth. Your God is not a tyrant sitting on a distant star. He is the king who is willing to get his hands dirty in the mud of your journey. Peter protests. His voice cracks the silence of the room, and his protest is, in reality, our own. Lord, you shall never wash my feet. We are comfortable with a God of lightning and thunder. We accept a God of absolute power, a God who judges from a high throne, and a God who demands our trembling submission. But we have a profound, visceral struggle with a God who kneels. We are terrified of a God who descends. We want a champion who crushes our enemies, but Jesus presents us with a servant who washes our wounds. This gesture is the visual summary, the cinematic trailer, and the spiritual heart of the entire Holy Week. It is the ultimate inversion of the world's pyramid of power. In the kingdom of men, the greatest sit at the head of the table while the least serve. In the kingdom of heaven, the greatest is the one who serves the least. Here is the divine revelation for your soul today. Jesus is not merely giving us a thing. He is not just giving us a ritual, a doctrine, or a set of rules. He is giving us himself. He is pouring out his very essence. The silence in that room, as the water splashed against the dusty, calloused feet of the disciples, was heavy with the weight of eternity. Can you hear the water hitting the basin? That sound is the heartbeat of grace. Among those disciples sat Judas, the betrayer. Understand the magnitude of this. Jesus did not skip the feet of the man who was about to sell him for 30 pieces of silver. He washed the feet of his executioners before they even hammered the nails. This is the God kind of love, a love that does not wait for you to be clean before it reaches for you, a love that serves you even when it knows you will fail. Stop trying to climb a ladder to reach a God who has already descended the staircase to find you. The towel is still in his hands. The water is still flowing. The invitation is not to be religious, but to be washed by the sovereign who kneels. If the master has laid aside his garments for you, will you lay aside your pride for him? The upper room is calling. The king is on his knees. The revolution of love has begun, and it starts at the lowest place. This is not just history. This is your invitation to a life transformed by the scandalous humility of the Almighty. We have reached the chilling center of the drama, the point where the mystery of human relations becomes a dense, suffocating fog. This is the moment where the spiritual war for the human heart is no longer a metaphor, it is a brutal reality. At the table sits Judas Iscariot. St. John, with a surgical and haunting precision, tells us that at the moment of the morsel, Satan entered into him. Do not mistake this for a scene of dark magic or a puppet being moved by strings. This is something far more terrifying. It is the mystery of human freedom reaching its breaking point. It is the moment a human soul, created for the infinite, decides to slam the door shut in the face of perfect love. It is the ultimate tragedy of the no given to the yes of God. Then, John writes 3 words that carry the weight of a dying sun. It was night. Understand the viral depth of this statement. This night was not merely a chronological marker on a Judean clock. It was not just the setting of the sun over the hills of Jerusalem. It was a spiritual eclipse. It was the arrival of the darkness that tries to swallow the light of the world. Whenever we turn our backs on the truth, whenever we choose the silver of this world over the Savior of our souls, it is always night. It is the cold, lonely darkness of a life lived without the presence. But look at the Master. As the darkness closes in, as the shadow of the cross falls across the table, Jesus does not retreat into fear. He does not lash out in vengeance. Instead, he delivers his farewell discourse, his final testament. This is the legacy of the King before the executioner arrives. Love one another, he commands, as I have loved you. This one word, as, is the measure of the entire Holy Week. It is the new standard of the universe. It is not a suggestion to be kind. It is a mandate to be sacrificial. This, as, means, to the very end. It means loving until it hurts, loving until you are emptied, loving even when you are betrayed. It is a love that has no if, no but, and no maybe. It is the love of the cross. Jesus looks into the eyes of his disciples, men who are about to scatter like dust in the wind, and he promises them the Comforter, the Holy Spirit. Why? Because he knows the storm is not just coming, it is already at the door. He knows that the chaos of the next few hours will be so violent that without a divine anchor, they will be swept away. Listen to this message for your life today. You are in a season of transmission. Before the chaos hits your health, your family, or your mind, God is speaking his testament into your spirit. He is giving you the word that will sustain you when the lights go out. The room is silent. The bread has been broken. The betrayer has vanished into the shadows. The air is heavy with the scent of the coming sacrifice. This is the final moment of peace before the world breaks. But remember, the night may be dark, and the night may have entered your life, but the light of the world is still speaking. He is still loving. He is still preparing you for a victory that the darkness cannot comprehend. The testament is signed in blood. The command is clear. The Comforter is on the way. Hold on to the as, for it is the only bridge that crosses the abyss of the night. The chaos is coming, but the King has already spoken the end from the beginning. Stay in the light, for the night of Judas is a dead end, but the night of Jesus is the prelude to an eternal dawn. It is written, the arrest of the Almighty and the fall of the world. The intimacy of the upper room is broken. The candles are extinguished, and the echoes of the final hymn fade into the cold night air. They descend from the city, their sandals crunching on the dry earth as they cross the Kidron Valley, the dark torrent that separates the religious center of the world from the Garden of Destiny. In the Gospel of St. John, this is not a scene of frantic hiding or desperate evasion. There is no sweating of blood in the shadows here. Instead, there is a sovereign agony. Jesus does not wait to be found. He does not cower behind the ancient olive trees. He steps into the moonlight, walking directly into the mouth of the conspiracy. The torches flicker in the distance. The rhythmic clanking of Roman steel and the hushed whispers of the temple guards grow louder, led by the one who sold his soul for the price of a slave. Judas, the betrayer, brings the world's power to arrest the world's creator. And here, at the threshold of the garden, the atmosphere shifts from a hunt to an encounter with the eternal. Jesus steps forward, his presence commanding the darkness to flee. He asks a question that vibrates through the foundations of time. Whom do you seek? They answer with the cold, legalistic precision of an arrest warrant, Jesus of Nazareth. And then, the answer falls like a divine guillotine, severing the arrogance of man from the reality of God. He says, Ego eimi. In our translations, it says, I am he. But in the raw, primordial Greek, it is simply, I am. Listen to the viral explosion of this truth. This is not a self-identification. This is a self-revelation. This is the same voice that thundered from the burning bush to Moses. This is the name that causes the stars to pulse and the oceans to stay within their bounds. This is the I Am that existed before Abraham was born. At the sound of this name, the physical laws of the universe react. The soldiers, the elite guards, the men of violence and iron, do not just flinch, they recoil and fall to the ground. Visualize the scene. An entire battalion of armed men, flattened by the weight of 2 words. It is a moment of absolute, terrifying clarity. The one they have come to chain is the one who holds the constellations in his hand. The one they have come to bind is the one who releases the captive. The universe is screaming in this silence. You cannot take him. He is the source of all breath. But here is the mystery that should break your heart and build your faith. After demonstrating that he could obliterate his enemies with a single syllable, Jesus chooses to be bound. He who is the author of liberty stretches out his wrists for the iron. He who is the lawgiver submits to the lawless. This is the viral message for your struggle today. God is never out of control. Even when you feel bound by your circumstances, even when it looks like the soldiers of your life, debt, sickness, betrayal, have surrounded you, remember the garden. Jesus was not captured, he surrendered. He allowed himself to be tied so that your chains could be broken forever. He submitted to the ropes of men so that you could be released from the shackles of sin and death. I Am is standing in your garden tonight. He is asking the darkness, whom do you seek? If you are seeking a savior, know that he has already won the battle by refusing to fight with earthly weapons. The power of God is not found in avoiding the cross, but in walking toward it with the majesty of a king who knows that his death is the world's only hope for life. The soldiers rise, trembling, to bind the hands that created them. But do not be deceived by the ropes. The king is still on his throne, even as he walks toward the trial. He is the sovereign of the sacrifice, and his I Am is the final word over your destiny. The chains are on him, so the glory can be on you. Step into the light of the I Am, and watch the power of the world fall to its knees. It is written, the surrender of the sword and the trial of 2 worlds. In the chaotic flickering of torchlight, as the I Am echoes through the trees, the flesh reacts where the spirit should reflect. Peter, driven by a desperate, impulsive loyalty, draws his steel. The blade flashes in the dark, cutting through the air and severing the ear of Malchus, the servant of the high priest. It is a moment of raw, human vengeance, the natural response of a kingdom built on iron and blood. But in this precise second, Jesus performs one of his most profound acts of revolutionary grace. He does not applaud the defense, he heals the enemy. He reaches out and repairs the harm done in his name, signaling once and for all the end of carnal weapons. Listen to this viral mandate for your life. You cannot fight the battles of the Spirit with the tools of the flesh. If you pick up the sword to defend the truth, you may end up wounding the very people the truth came to save. Jesus silences the steel because his kingdom is not of this world. And then, the prophecy fulfills itself in a heartbreaking vacuum of courage. The disciples flee. The shepherd is struck, and the sheep are scattered into the shadows. Between the ancient twisted roots of the olive trees and the biting cold of the Judean night, the Son of Man stands utterly alone, bound by those he created, walking toward a destiny he authored. The scene shifts from the garden of prayer to the halls of power. The captive is dragged through the city gates, first to Annas, then to Caiaphas. We are witnessing the birth of the ultimate injustice. The religious trial begins in the dead of night, a total violation of their own sacred laws. It is a theater of the absurd, fueled by late-night interrogations, whispered conspiracies, and the desperate clashing of false testimonies. They are trying to put the light on trial in the darkness, but the light remains silent, for truth needs no defense against a lie. And now, the drama escalates to the political stage, as Jesus is thrust before Pontius Pilate, the representative of the Roman eagle. This is no longer just a local dispute, it is a cosmic confrontation. It is a dialogue of the deaf between two incompatible realms. Pilate speaks the language of Caesar: power, borders, legions, and taxes. Jesus speaks the language of the Father: truth, spirit, eternity, and sacrifice. Are you a king? Pilate asks, his voice laced with the cynicism of a man who has seen too much blood and too many pretenders. Jesus responds with a royalty that Pilate cannot comprehend: my kingdom is not of this world. Understand the viral weight of this distinction. Pilate's power comes from the top down, enforced by the sword. Jesus' power comes from the bottom up, enforced by the cross. Pilate is worried about an insurrection. Jesus is launching a resurrection. Pilate represents a kingdom that will eventually crumble into dust and ruins, while Jesus is the cornerstone of a kingdom that shall have no end. The tension in the praetorium is thick enough to breathe. On one side, the man with the power to crucify. On the other, the man with the power to save. Pilate is the one who is actually on trial, though he does not know it. He washes his hands, but he cannot wash his soul. He looks at truth and asks, "What is truth?" while truth is looking him straight in the eyes. This is the message for you today. Whose kingdom are you building? Are you still drawing the sword of Peter, trying to force your way through life? Or are you standing with a bound king, knowing that your silence in the face of lies is your greatest strength? The world may judge you, bind you, and hand you over to the Pilates of this age, but they cannot touch your kingdom. The shepherd has been struck so that the sheep can finally find their way home. The trial has begun, but the verdict of grace is already written in the heavens. It is written, the ecce homo and the collision of kings. In the sterile, cold halls of the praetorium, two worlds collide in a silence so loud it echoes through the centuries. On one side stands Pontius Pilate, the embodiment of Roman steel, the guardian of the established order, and the voice of a secular power that only understands what it can crush. On the other side stands Jesus, exhausted, bleeding, and bound, representing a truth that the world cannot contain. Pilate looks at this broken man, stripped of his followers and his dignity, and asks a question dripping with political irony: "Are you the king of the Jews?" To Pilate, kings possess legions, gold, and monuments. To see a king in this state is a joke, a localized problem for a bored governor. But the response of Jesus shatters the Romans' logic: my kingdom is not of this world. Listen to the viral revelation for your soul today. If God's kingdom were of this world, his servants would have fought. If his power was derived from human sources, he would have raised an army. But his royalty is not about domination, it is about revelation. For Pilate, to be a king is to sit above others. For Jesus, to be a king is to die for others. For the world, power is the ability to take life. For the Christ, power is the authority to give it. Pilate, blinded by the dust of his own ambition, scoffs with a cynicism that defines our modern age: what is truth? He asks the question while staring directly into the eyes of truth himself. He sees a political nuisance, an administrative headache to be managed, while the universe sees its architect standing in the dock. Pilate is looking for a fact, but he is standing before the way, the truth, and the life. Then, the brutality begins. The Roman whip, the flagrum, tears into the flesh of the Almighty. The soldiers, bored and cruel, weave a crown of thorns and ram it onto his brow. They drape a purple cloak over his bleeding shoulders, mocking the very sovereignty that sustains their every breath. They strike him, they spit on him, and they bow in a derisive parody of worship. This is the inversion of the cosmos. The King of Glory is treated as the jester of the guardhouse. Finally, Pilate leads him out before the bloodthirsty crowd. He utters the words that have haunted history, Ecce homo. Behold the man. Behold the man. Pilate thought he was showing a pathetic figure of pity, but he was inadvertently announcing the masterpiece of God's love. Behold the man who takes your place. Behold the man who wears your thorns so you can wear his crown. Behold the man who is scourged so you can be healed. This is the behold that demands a response from your heart today. Are you looking at Jesus as an administrative problem in your life? Something to be balanced with your schedule or handled when it's convenient? Or do you see the King whose throne is built on the very suffering he endured for you? The world will always mock the truth. The established order will always try to flagellate the spirit. But the Ecce homo stands firm. He does not defend himself because he is busy defending you. The crown of thorns is the most viral image of victory ever recorded. It proves that there is no depth of human pain, no shadow of mockery, and no weight of exhaustion that he has not claimed as his own. Pilate washed his hands, but the blood of the Ecce homo began to wash the world. Look at him. Behold the man. In his brokenness, your wholeness is found. In his silence, your victory is spoken. The trial is over. The sacrifice has begun. Follow the man of sorrows, for he is leading you to the joy of an empty tomb. The atmosphere in the praetorium reaches a fever pitch of demonic intensity. Pilate, the man of Roman law, is trapped in the iron cage of his own political ambition. He senses the innocence radiating from the broken, bleeding figure beside him, and he tries, with a desperate, weak-willed diplomacy, to release him. He offers a choice that should have been no choice at all. He presents the world with a mirror. On one side, the Prince of Peace, the Son of God, the healer of the broken. On the other, Barabbas, a notorious brigand, a man of blood and insurrection. Then comes the viral roar of a humanity that has lost its way. Not this man, but Barabbas. Understand the cosmic tragedy of this moment. The crowd chooses the thief of life over the giver of life. They choose the violence they know over the love they cannot control. In this exchange, the great substitution begins. The guilty is set free, and the innocent takes his place. Barabbas walks out of the dungeon, breathing the air of a freedom he did not earn, while the King of Glory is handed over to the wood. Pilate, the ultimate symbol of bureaucratic cowardice, calls for a basin. He washes his hands in a futile attempt to cleanse a soul stained by the silence of his own complicity. He thinks he is washing away responsibility. Instead, he is drowning in the judgment of history. Listen to the viral contrast of the kingdom. On one side, the deafening, chaotic agitation of the mob, screaming, spitting, and fueled by a collective madness. On the other side, the silent dignity of the Christ. He does not argue. He does not plead. He does not curse. His silence is the roar of a lion that has already won. The trial is over, and the liturgy of the cross begins. This is not a march to a funeral. It is a sacred procession to an altar. Jesus shoulder presses the weight of the world's sin. Every step he takes toward the hill called the skull, Golgotha, is a step into the heart of your darkness. The wood scrapes against his raw, flagellated back, but he carries it because he is carrying you. He is not a victim of Roman engineering. He is the priest of his own sacrifice. They reach the summit. The sound of the hammer hitting the nails is the sound of the debt being cancelled. He is hoisted between two criminals, the King of Kings flanked by outcasts, making his throne in the middle of our mess. Above his thorn-crowned head, the truth is written in Hebrew, Latin, and Greek, so that the whole world can read the verdict of heaven: Jesus the Nazarene, King of the Jews. Here is the viral message for your struggle today. Pilate intended the sign as a mockery, but God intended it as a manifesto. Even when the world tries to label your faith as a failure, even when they nail your hopes to a tree of despair, the truth remains written in stone and blood. Jesus is King. He is King over the skull places of your life, the dead ends, the dry bones, and the places of execution. He was numbered among the transgressors so that you could be numbered among the saints. He was stripped of his clothes so that you could be clothed in righteousness. He was lifted up on a cross so that he could draw your heart out of the pit. The Barabbas in you has been set free because the Jesus in you took the nails. The march to Golgotha was the most beautiful walk in history, for it was the walk that brought the Creator back to his creature. The hill is steep, the wood is heavy, and the sky is turning black. But look at the sign. Look at the King. The mockery of men has become the majesty of God. The sacrifice is almost complete, and the victory is closer than you think. Stand at the foot of the cross, for the blood that is falling is the only water that can truly quench the fire of your soul. The King is on his throne of wood, and the world will never be the same again. The atmosphere atop the hill of Golgotha has become a thick, suffocating mantle of divine sorrow and cosmic weight. The sky has turned to ink, as if the sun itself refuses to witness the deicide of its creator. At the foot of this rugged, blood-stained throne, amidst the mocking laughter of the soldiers and the gambling for his garments, stands a small, fragile island of fidelity, Mary, his mother, and the disciple whom Jesus loved. In the throes of an agony that would shatter any human mind, Jesus does not look inward at his pain. He looks outward at our brokenness. With lungs collapsing under the weight of the cross, he gasps out the words of a new creation: "Woman, behold your son. Behold your mother." Listen to the viral revelation of this moment. In his dying breath, Jesus is not just settling family affairs. He is founding a new humanity. He is weaving a new tapestry of kinship that transcends blood, race, and language. He is giving his mother to the world and the world to his mother. At the cross, the solitary sufferance of God becomes the adoption of every orphan soul. He becomes the brother of humanity so that we might finally become the children of the Father. Then, through the parched, cracked lips of the Word made flesh, comes the cry that echoes through the corridors of every thirsty soul: "I thirst." Do not be deceived. This was not merely a physical craving for moisture. This was a metaphysical agony. This was the thirst of the Creator for his creature. It was a thirst for souls, a burning, divine longing to see love finally understood, finally accepted, and finally returned. He thirsted for the very people who were spitting on him. He thirsted for you. And what did the world offer the source of living water? They offered him vinegar. They offered bitterness to the one who offered them the wine of the kingdom. Then, the moment that fractured history arrived. With a voice that summoned the last remnants of his earthly strength, Jesus cried out, "It is finished." Tetelestai. Understand the viral power of this word. In the ancient world, tetelestai was the word a merchant used when a debt was fully paid. It was the word an artist used when the final brushstroke was placed on a masterpiece. It was the word a priest used when the sacrifice was perfect. This was not the whimpering cry of a victim expiring in defeat. It was the triumphant shout of a warrior who had just crushed the head of the serpent. It was the roar of an architect who had finished his greatest work. The debt of 10,000 lifetimes was cancelled in a single breath. He bowed his head, not because his life was taken, but because he chose to hand over his spirit. Immediately, the universe responded to the death of its king. The massive, heavy veil of the temple, the barrier between man and the presence of God, was torn from top to bottom. Not by human hands from below, but by divine hands from above. The earth trembled, the rocks split, and the graves opened. The wall is down. The way is open. To ensure his death, a Roman soldier plunged a spear into his side, and John records the final, staggering detail. Blood and water flowed out. This is the viral fountain of your salvation. The water to wash you, the blood to redeem you. Out of the wounded side of the new Adam, the church, his bride, was born. The side of God was opened so that you could finally hide within his heart. Here is the message for your life today. Your past is finished. Your debt is paid. Your shame is covered by the blood and washed by the water. The masterpiece of your redemption is complete, and there is nothing you can add to it except your Amen. The king has died so that the captive can live. The spear that pierced him opened a door that no man can shut. Stand in the shadow of the finished work, for the darkness of the cross is the only place where you will find the light of the world. The work is done. The king has won. The path to the Father is open forever. The violence has subsided. The hammers are silent, the mocking crowds have retreated to their homes, and the sky remains heavy with the weight of a transformed reality. The body, the broken, holy vessel of the living God, is finally lowered from the wood. In this hour of profound shadows, two men emerge from the periphery of fear, Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus. These were men of status who once hid their faith, but the cross has a viral power to turn cowards into lions. They approach the broken king not with a pauper's burial, but with royal quantities of myrrh and aloes, over 100 pounds of perfume, an amount fit only for the burial of an emperor. They wrap the Word made flesh in clean linen and gently lay him in a brand new tomb, carved out of the rock, situated in the heart of a garden. And here, the narrative of Holy Week descends into the most profound, heavy, and mysterious silence the universe has ever known. Holy Saturday. Listen to the viral truth of this stillness. The silence of the tomb is not the silence of death. It is the silence of germination. It is the quiet of the womb before the birth. It is the hushed anticipation of the soil before the sprout breaks through the crust of the earth. As Jesus himself prophesied, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone, but if it dies, it bears much fruit. The Passion is the cosmic history of a God who so recklessly, so infinitely loved the world that he refused to leave any corner of our existence untouched by his presence. He accepted the descent into the lowest basement of our human condition, into the cold, dark, and lonely shadow of the sepulchre, so that there would be no part of your darkness left without his light. He entered the grave to sabotage death from the inside out. He went into the prison of the tomb to steal the keys from the jailer. While the world thinks the story has ended in a stone-cold no, heaven is preparing an eternal yes. This silence is the breath before the shout. It is the pause before the symphony. It is the moment where the old world dies so that the new world can be born. Here is the viral message for your Saturday seasons. When you feel buried by your circumstances, when it seems like God is silent and the stone has been rolled over your hopes, remember the garden tomb. You are not being buried, you are being planted. The silence of God is not his absence, it is his activity behind the veil. He is working in the root system of your soul. He is preparing a resurrection that the world cannot explain away. Everything is accomplished, yet everything is just beginning. The tetelestai of the cross was the end of the dead, but the silence of the tomb is the beginning of the new life. The old order of sin and separation is finished. The new order of grace and union is germinating in the dark. Do not fear the shadows of the sepulchre. The light of the world is inside the darkness with you, and he is about to break the seal. The stone is heavy, but the Spirit is hovering. The night is long, but the morning is inevitable. The king is resting, but the kingdom is rising. Hold your breath, for the countdown to the 8th day has begun. From the depths of the earth to the heights of the heavens, the message is clear. Love has descended to the bottom, so that you can be raised to the throne. The tomb is occupied today, but it will be empty tomorrow. Believe in the silence, for it is the sound of victory being prepared for you.